Hello and welcome to another action-packed episode of Saved by the 90s. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today is a guy who always does his own stunts, Ken Bakley. Hey, Ken.
Hello.
This month, we're going to take a look at action films of the decade, specifically those released in April, of which there were surprisingly many to choose from. So tighten up that ammo belt, because this is Saved by the 90s.
Sunday morning, Disney's lovable characters make up the most colorful Easter parade ever. Joan London and Alan Thicke host the Walt Disney World Happy Easter Parade.
The debate on which decade produced the best action films may be hotly contested, but one thing we can all agree on is that the 90s gave us a plethora of great titles, 4 of which we'll be discussing today.
Our first film this month involves a group of rambunctious boys who take on a group of terrorists holding their class hostage. Released on April 26, 1991, this is Toy Soldiers.
Terrorists just took over their school. The students have no weapons.
Are you with me or not? Of course we're with you.
And no way out.
We'll get everybody killed. It's too late to back out now.
The only chance they've got
We're really gonna do this? You bet.
is each other. Toy Soldiers, rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you.
When terrorists seize control of a boarding school, a group of troublemaking boys decide to resist them. I feel like to start off, we have to say that it's a great privilege when we get to discuss movies from all over the decade, because being from 1991, this still feels a lot like a late 80s kind of movie.
Absolutely. This does not feel like a 90s movie whatsoever.
Oh, no.
This feels very 80s. And I also enjoy going across the whole decade, too. I think that's really fun. And we have a really nice swath of movies this month.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a movie that I always loved this movie as a kid, and I think that it's pretty obvious why.
Yeah.
As I watch it now as an adult, I still love it as an adult. I think that this movie is just so great, so much fun. And the thing that I guess I never really picked up on it before was the idea that as much of an action movie this is, it's also just this kind of regular teen drama.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
There's a lot
Like
of that
so, they spend so much time. This is directed by Daniel Petrie Jr. He spends so much time with these characters before the whole hostage situation occurs.
Yeah, there isn't actually any hostage stuff going on for maybe 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's all just like Animal House, these kids doing bad stuff, getting under the principal's skin and challenging him, and they're like mixing up vodka and mouthwash type drinks, and they're tapping phone lines and calling up sex hotlines, and they're being bad students. And a huge part of the movie is just that, like them raging against authority and all of that. And I think that that's one of the things that makes this movie unique, in that it is an action movie, but there's this really heavy layer of just like almost like a high school comedy of sorts thrown in there.
I mean, I don't think I quite liked this movie as much as you did, because I think there is something interesting about how much time the movie spends trying to establish these characters and the setting before the actual plot is set into motion. And I guess it's just kind of dependent on your tolerance for that much world building in like a thematic sense, because I think an important thing there would be a movie that was very, very confident in its ability to take these character traits we've set up and then make them relevant when it counts. And it's to varying degrees that it succeeds. I think there is something generic about the actual action.
Yeah, I think that the action is it's all right. I'd say it's the action itself is fairly middle of the road. I mean, certainly this is not a movie that would get made in today's sensitive climate, especially when it comes to schools and violence in schools. The fact that these are a group of, is it Colombian terrorists?
I believe so.
A group of Colombian terrorists that take over a school, and they have giant like mounted machine guns and rocket launchers, and kids get shot, teachers get shot. That poor security guard, Frank Ingram, this guy, he's working open to close. They show him in the morning, they show him closing the gates at night. This guy just works 24/7 at this school, and he's the first one that gets killed. So, which is really unfortunate.
Such an unfair world, this world of toy soldiers.
R.I.P. Frank.
Always in our hearts.
But the action itself is average at best. I think that the squib work in this movie is excellent. I think there's some really good squib work happening, especially when that one guy gets shot in the head and they sort of show it like in close up. I thought that looked really good. And the rest of the actual action was pretty bland, but I think that the thing that I liked the most was just the group of friends scheming to get the best of these terrorists. One of my favorite movies of all time is Stand By Me, and I'm other than the Will Wheaton factor, I certainly got some Stand By Me vibes in this movie, where you have this group of friends and each of them have very different backgrounds, and they're all kind of outsiders in their own way, which I thought was funny because the terrorists, they're there looking for a specific kid. The whole plot is that this guy was arrested, extradited into the United States. The U.S. has him. So these terrorists come up and they aim to kidnap the judge's son, who's presiding over the case. And the kid, they get wind that these terrorists are making their way up, so they get the kid out of there like immediately. So before, like days before the terrorists even arrive. So the kid's not even there, and they decide, okay, well, this is a prep school. Most of these kids come from rich families. We'll just take them all hostage and still get our demands met. And the specific kids that these guys target just so happen to be the exact group that is like the main group of the movie. I think there might be like one extra kid in there that they pick, but for the most part, it's the exact group of friends, including Sean Astin and Will Wheaton, which is a little ridiculous. Let's be honest. That's a little silly.
Yeah. When I say that the action of the movie is generic, I didn't mean just like the mechanics of the actual like action scenes. I kind of meant the entire structural element of it, because there is a really interesting idea here. The whole Stand By Me theme of it, that I feel to some extent kind of gets lost the later you go into it, and the more it builds up, and the more they're trying to cover for all these sort of these like series of small contrivances that kind of build up. But on the whole, I mean, there's nothing terribly misguided about it. It is a fun idea, efficiently made, but just perhaps for me, not quite as involved with its own premise as I feel like I wanted it to be.
Yeah, I can understand that. A lot of bowl cuts in this movie. I think that's probably the only thing that would scream 90s for me, would be the bowl cuts. I guess that was a carryover from the 80s, but I remember I had a bowl cut way after I probably should have got rid of it. Also Will Wheaton plays the son of a mob boss, and he's got this like cross earring, this dangly cross earring, and he talks with an accent.
The mob
really
boss,
bad.
played by Jerry Orbach, I feel like we need to mention.
Yeah, Jerry Orbach. Yep.
The wonderful Jerry Orbach. I did not expect to see him there because I guess it says that he's uncredited. Is that true? I don't remember seeing the credit.
No, I don't remember seeing him in the credits. I'm not sure why he would be uncredited. He's not in it that much. He's in it for like maybe 2 scenes, 2 or 3 scenes.
Yeah, so it wasn't credited. So like, I guess on the IMDb they list uncredited people at the bottom. So I was just scanning over it before I watched to see who was in it, and then it was like, hey, it's Jerry Orbach.
Louis Gossett Jr. is in it. He plays the dean. He's great in this. I think he plays a really good dean character. And of course, Sean Astin is Billy Tepper. His father is a contractor. It's interesting that it's all the fathers. There's no successful mothers of these children. It's all just the dads who are bringing home the bacon.
I mean, it seems like a very kind of stuffy, paternalistic kind of environment anyway, with these sorts of old prep schools. So
yeah, when you look at the movie as a whole, there's only one scene that has any women in it at all, and it's the scene when they're like have all the parents in the meeting. That's the only
I think
scene
that
of
is
any
I
women.
think that is the only part where they actually give dialogue to a woman.
Yeah, and it's like one line, like, you need to do something about this. That's it. I also like that even after the terrorists come in and take them all hostage, they go about their day-to-day business. And one of the things I liked is that they still take the time to show the kids acting like kids despite the situation that they're in. Like, they don't just completely drop that aspect of the film. They still have them joking around and, picking on each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even though they're in a pretty bad way.
Yeah, that's one of those small factors. One of those little components to it that I did like, that did add a bit more flavor to it. It's the kind of thing maybe that's kind of my concern, is that there are these moments where the world feels very lived in, and then there are other moments where it just feels like a regular old action movie that is completely irrelevant to its setting or its context, and it's just about improbably lucky and clever heroes taking down antagonists that seem to overlook the most basic things in their otherwise very intricate plans. But you can kind of get that anywhere. So
yeah.
When the important stuff was happening is when I kind of felt like I wasn't as tuned in, which was a bit of a problem for me.
It should also be noted that these are kids this is a school that's comprised mostly of kids who were expelled from other prep schools. So it's like a class of the bad boys. So yeah, there's a lot of like clever, like you said, a lot of like clever scheming that goes on, like with the radio controlled airplane thing, and it's all it's pretty fun. I really enjoy it. I like revisiting this movie every now and then. I think it's pretty fun. But I also understand what you're saying, where the blending of the two sort of genres, where you have this almost teen comedy mixing in with this action movie, it doesn't always necessarily gel. Like it doesn't always fit together very nicely. Oftentimes it does feel like two separate movies that were just smashed together.
I wanted more. I guess if I couldn't have more world building in this prep school, I wanted more Jerry Orbach staring at people and walking against a wall lit such that his shadow was giant in proportion to his body. Which there are at least maybe 1 or 2 shots in that movie, and it's very impressed with itself being able to pull that off.
I just wanted more Sean Astin and his unshakable tude. He had so much tude in this movie, and this is
a high tude movie.
Yeah, he didn't give an F about anything. Like the scene when they take the time to show him spitting in all of their sandwiches. I love that scene.
It's both of them. Like he's carrying up 2 sandwiches to the terrorists, and it shows him just just one unbroken shot of him spitting in both of them.
And there's like a little pause because he used all his spit for the first one, so he's got to gather up some more spit for the second one. And they take the time to like let him do that. Let him gather up that spit.
and the noises are mixed very loudly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh boy.
Tomorrow, the new series that has everyone talking.
Can I ask her about her log? Many have.
It's must-see, must-tape television.
You were in love with Laura. The two of you were seeing each other secretly.
Twin Peaks at its regular time tomorrow at 9, 8 Central.
Love any opportunity we have to
I know,
even
right?
fleetingly mention Twin Peaks on the show.
When I was searching April commercials and I stumbled upon that one, I was like, well, gotta use that.
But it does bring up the fact we must talk about Twin Peaks in more depth someday.
Of course. Yeah, no doubt about that.
Our next film explores themes of class division, a serious and relevant topic made entirely more fun by the inclusion of Ice-T and Gary Busey. Released on April 15th, 1994, this is Surviving the Game.
Jack Mason knows he's going to die someday.
Damn, I wish I'd never started smoking.
But today, he's not in the mood.
This is where it gets interesting.
Never underestimate
Come on, Mason!
a man who has nothing to lose. Rutger Hauer, Charles Dutton, Gary Busey, F. Murray Abraham, William McNamara, and Ice-T. Surviving the Game.
Bang!
Directed by Ernest Dickerson.
I know, right?
What a great trailer that was.
I know. That's like the end part of it. If you listen to the whole thing or watch the whole trailer, it's even better. I liked the build up, the that was happening towards the end. Ice-T stars as Mason, a man down on his luck with nothing to lose when he's approached to lead a group of wealthy hunters on an expedition in the Pacific Northwest. But things get really twisted when Mason discovers the group isn't after wild animals, they're after him. So, Ken, what did you think of Surviving the Game?
I knew I was going to really feel like this movie had something special to offer. About 2 seconds in, at the first title card, I think I'll try and send it to you now. It's like one of those horizontal billings with 2 actors, and it's like slanted, and it just says, so basically the first thing that you see in the movie is Rutger Hauer, Ice-T.
Mm-hmm.
And if that isn't a way to start a movie, I don't know what is.
Oh yeah, there it is. There it is.
As soon as I saw it, I had to take a screenshot.
This is another one that I have always loved since I was younger, and revisiting it now, it's still great. It is still such a blast, this movie.
Oh yeah.
So Ice-T plays this like kind of charismatic, scrappy, homeless guy. To say he's down on his luck is a bit of an understatement. This guy's life is in shambles. His dog gets hit by a car. His best buddy, it gets killed. He's at the end of his rope. So there's a scene where he's going to kill himself. He's going to walk in front of traffic, and Charles S. Dutton, which I don't know when he started going by Charles S. Dutton, because they call him Charles Dutton here, but later on, I'm pretty sure he goes by Charles S. Dutton. But anyway, he saves him, convinces him to go see his colleague, who's played by Rutger Hauer, and is in this ridiculous like hunting office that happens to have a treadmill in it. And
I love that.
And then he asks Ice-T if he smokes, and he's like, as much as I can. And then he's like, okay. And he sort of dismisses him. And then Ice-T's like, I can run, I can do it. So he has him running on this treadmill in his office for 30 minutes. And then he hires him to aid them on this hunt. And it's funny that like Ice-T doesn't see red flags all over the place right away, because he's a very intelligent guy. Like he's a resourceful guy. He knows what's up, and he doesn't seem to see the red flags during this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, feelings about hunting in the modern day for sport aside, I feel like just the culture enough would inform you that if a bunch of rich people are like, hey, you want to go hunting with us? Say no.
Right.
Run.
Like, why would they pick you? Like, like, I mean, I guess he probably thought of it as like almost like a charity type thing where they're because Charles S. Dutton works for this mission, so he probably thought it was on the up and up. But man, it wasn't. Turns out it's the most dangerous game, is what it is. Mm-hmm. But right away, what I love is that they set him loose. First, they treat him great the night before. They wine him, they dine him, they have a good time, and then the next morning they immediately wake him up with a gun in his face and tell him to start running. What he does, I think, is great. He doubles back and he goes back into, so like they set off after him. He's on foot, no weapons or anything. They're on like ATVs, like Mad Max style ATVs. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you saw them. They have like these crazy like metal fronts on them that are clearly aftermarket.
They seem to devote most of their time and resources to preparing for this.
Absolutely. And they set off after him after a little bit, and Ice-T smartly circles back and goes back to the hunting cabin, and he breaks into this locked room and finds heads of all of their previous hunts. And first of all, it should be noted that the movie opens with a man being killed, so we know what's up. Like their previous hunt. My first question is like, how often do they do this? Like, do they do it like every weekend? I mean, it seems like quite the endeavor.
Like logistically, it would be hard to do every weekend. Maybe it's for special occasions.
So he goes and he finds the heads, and then he, like the badass he is, he burns the whole cabin down. Mm-hmm. And then Gary Busey assaults him in an amazing scene. The scene when Busey jumps him.
Man, it's a scene.
The night before that, there was a really incredible monologue from Gary Busey about him as a child and this horrific thing that his father made him do. And I'm just like, man, Busey was the best. He used to be so awesome. Mm-hmm. I think he could be awesome again if somebody gave him a good role. But the rest of the movie is pretty much just these guys trying to hunt Ice-T down and Ice-T outsmarting him, being awesome. Yeah. And he's got some sweet dreads in this too.
Oh yeah. What are you gonna say about it? It's a bunch of character actors chasing Ice-T around the woods, and Ice-T wins. Of course, he would win. He is very resourceful. You're not a detective on the Special Victims Unit for 25,000 years otherwise. I enjoyed this. I especially enjoyed just the tacit implication there of like that any narrative device about rich people hunting poor people for sport inherently has a subtext to it. And there is no bones about the fact that there is a lot of subtext to just everything about this about what's going on here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It is all subtext. It is essentially text.
Yeah. Yep. I do like the scene when he knocks down the tree and gets them to cross over the tree and then starts throwing rocks at them. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, he kills one of them during that. Yeah, he gets kills
one of them.
I think it's the son. Is that when he kills the son?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So F. Murray Abraham is on the hunt with his son, and who's played by William McNamara. And the son, he doesn't tell the son that they're hunting a human. And when he finds out, the son like freaks out. He's just like, no, that's unacceptable. But then I guess he just sort of goes along with it for a little bit. He's not happy about it though.
Yeah. William McNamara was also is also the serial killer in Copycat, which I saw for the first time quite recently. A very mid-90s movie, if there ever was one.
I've never seen that actually.
It's all right. It's pretty okay. Sigourney Weaver's good in it. Holly Hunter's in it too. She's good in it. Everyone's good in it.
Rutger Hauer plays a really great villain. I mean, it seems like this role was made for Rutger Hauer. It was just it was designed around him.
It's the dual billing. This is as much a Rutger Hauer vehicle as it is an Ice-T vehicle in my mind.
Yeah. Ice-T was great in this too.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes I find his acting questionable, but I think he did a really good job in this movie.
Oh yeah.
I mean, what else is there to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie very aware of the subtext of its plot development, with some good performances and a scene where Ice-T and Gary Busey try to throw each other through a window into a burning building.
Yep.
What else do you need from the movies? I mean, isn't that why we go?
Exactly.
Also, I don't want to say exactly what it was, because it really is one of those things that you have to slowly realize yourself. But I do enjoy the last, like, how the movie wraps itself up in exactly 30 seconds at the end with just a great final 2 shots.
Yep. I loved it.
It's so good.
Yeah. The
very
closing
very
off the closing off scene in this is just priceless.
Because it is so like time from economical from a time perspective, because it's maybe builds up and then there's like 3 5-second shots, maybe 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and they are all 1000% essential to my happiness as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely.
This spring, the deadliest creatures in the universe will meet their match. Each other.
Hey Marines, did you pick up Aliens vs. Predator for PC this month and are having a hard time fighting off those xenomorph hordes? Well, you're in luck, because I have a special code that will help you out in this month's Cheaters Corner. To get all weapons and ammo, just activate the cheat screen and type in "Give All Weapons." If you're playing as the Predator and still having some trouble, here's a bonus cheat for you. In the cheat menu, type in "Skull Collector," and you'll now have God mode. Now, get back out there and kick some butt.
All personnel must evacuate.
Our next feature needs little introduction due to its incredible popularity upon its release. Directed by Michael Bay and starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Released on April 7th, 1995, this is Bad Boys.
It was the perfect crime wherein everything went according to plan.
I need a SWAT team, helicopters. We're calling all cars here, baby.
But there was something they didn't plan on.
Sir,
Martin Lawrence.
you forgot your boarding pass.
Will Smith.
Freeze!
Bad Boys. What you gonna do? At theaters April 7th.
Marcus Burnett is a family man. Mike Lowry is a ladies' man. Both are Miami cops, and they have 72 hours to reclaim a consignment of drugs stolen from under their station's nose. To complicate matters, in order to get the assistance of a key witness, they have to pretend to be each other.
Do they, though?
No, not really.
Like, I mean, that was sort of the thing that I never quite understood about this movie is they don't have to keep up the charade. Like,
no.
there's no reason to keep up the charade.
Essentially, after a certain point very early on, it does not matter anymore.
I understand why he did it to begin with, because she said, Téa Leoni's character says that she's only going to talk to Mike Lowry. So Marcus is like, yeah, I'm Mike Lowry, because he was out of the office. I don't know what he was doing. Why one was there and the other one wasn't. They're partners, so you'd think that they'd have the same shift, but you know, whatever. But then they keep it going until almost the end of the movie. And like they swap apartments. Like he's at I don't know, but I did like the scene when she finds all the pictures of Will Smith of Mike Lowry in the apartment. And it raised so many questions. Like, first of all, why does Mike have all these pictures of him. He has dozens of pictures of himself. I mean, he's so vain. Like, he's so self-absorbed. Like, why do you have so many pictures of yourself in your apartment, dude? Like, that seems ridiculous. And then there was the whole like scene where the whole exchange that happened afterwards, where she admits that she thought he was gay and that was his boyfriend, and then he freaks out. Oh boy, Bad Boys. I really, so this was never a movie I liked. I never liked the Bad Boys movies. And rewatching it now, I also rewatched Bad Boys 2 just for the sake of completion.
And in preparation for the upcoming release of
Bad Boys for
Life.
Yeah. I also find it interesting that in the, like, all the promotional materials and stuff for this, they would always say, Bad Boys, what you gonna do? And I wish they would have kept that as like a subtitle of this movie, because it would have made it even so much better.
I mean, this whole movie to some degree just builds up to that moment before the end credits, where it just smashes into the song.
Yeah. Oh. I do not. I can't stand this movie. I don't like the second one either. The only part I like of the second one is at the beginning. There's this really cool scene. Have you seen Bad Boys 2?
I have not.
There's this really great scene in the opening of Bad Boys 2 when they go undercover to Klan rally and bust up a Klan rally, and that's a cool scene. But these movies are just, they're bad. Like, these are not good movies. They're not enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. And I know that people have talked about Michael Bay nonstop. Like, people love talking about Michael Bay and picking apart his style and all of that stuff.
Every side of Michael Bay's career has been argued from every context on every level. But yeah, I mean, this was his first feature, and it feels like he doesn't. I think a lot of even like Michael Bay's defenders will say this is one he does not feel like he has an identity as a filmmaker yet. You can see
the shades of it happening. You can see.
There are like shots where it feels like, okay, this is 100% Michael Bay.
Right. There's certain Michael Bay-isms that are happening. Like he likes to do the like the zoom in on people from like the lower angles. Like he likes to zoom right it up in on people. And you see that in this. The color palette in this is similar to his later movies. I mean, everything's yellow or blue.
Or like the very specific way that he does like the shots, like the rotating, like the 360 shots around someone.
Yeah. He doubles down on that in Bad Boys 2. He goes way overboard on all of that in Bad Boys 2.
He's established by then. That's post-Rock, post-Armageddon, and Pearl Harbor, which we don't ever have to talk about ever, but, you know.
I'd rather just not talk about any of his movies, to be honest with you.
I still can't believe he made, essentially, he turned Pearl Harbor into an action movie.
He did. I saw that in the theater, and I just remember being so appalled at everything.
Troublesome. That's the thing where I don't particularly like a lot of the Michael Bay movies that I have seen, but I completely 100% understand why a lot of critics really do enjoy just discussing him. And even like the Bay defenders or apologists, I do understand where they're coming from. I just think my tastes are not quite there. But yeah, there's not much to say here if you're thinking about like peak Michael Bay, because there isn't really peak Michael Bay yet. This is his first movie. This is Baby Bay.
This is the infant. Michael Bay is his infancy.
He doesn't know what he's doing yet. He's got to get a little more time.
I mean, you can definitely see the flourishes in there, and I think it all stems from his time with doing like commercials and music videos and stuff. That's all that stuff he pulled over from doing that, and I think that's one of the reasons his movies are just so overly stylized and so ridiculous. Like, I think a lot of people think his movies are cool. Like, when you see a Michael Bay movie, you think, oh man, this movie's cool. It's a cool movie. But I see most of his now. I think The Rock is great. I really like The Rock, but for the most part, I think when I see his movies, I think, oh, that's lame. That's it's just hokey and just so over, especially Bad Boys 2. Rewatching Bad Boys 2 now, it is laughable. It is so ridiculous. And more so than this one, more so than the first one.
I think a bad Michael Bay movie is one where it doesn't feel like he actually had control over what was happening. Like, his movies are not are like too. He knows what's happening. He's not like oblivious to all of this.
No, of course. I mean, if you look at Pain and Gain, I feel like Pain and Gain was him really leaning into his style and sort of, he was almost, it felt so self-referential. Like he knew exactly what he was making with Pain and Gain. It felt like a almost self-deprecating in that way, where he was like parodying himself in that movie. And I really love Pain and Gain.
Yeah. Or even like something like Armageddon. Armageddon is a very rare class of like. Armageddon is basically like very few other movies I've ever seen, in the sense that it's a movie that I hate that I have also seen 5 times. I cannot like that. I mean, that is like an example of the Bay as just runtime and formally and budget wise just excess. This is, as his first film, this shows how much of his style is just either developing or inherent, because this movie is under 2 hours and was made for $19 million.
Yeah. Getting back to Bad Boys, if you look at the actual narrative, if you look at the plot of this movie, it is just utterly unrealistic. Is such an understatement when it comes to this movie. Like the scene when they go in and there's like the dead body and they just completely contaminate the crime scene. Presumably because they're bad boys.
Yeah, they're bad boys.
There was also this really great scene in a nightclub, and in this nightclub, this Miami nightclub, there's like bodies wrapped in tinfoil hanging from the ceiling. I don't know if you saw that, but they're like just bodies hanging everywhere in this nightclub. And I'm like, what kind of nightclub is this that has like hanging bodies wrapped around it everywhere?
I like the very of its time, the fish tank, the giant glass fish tank in the bathroom.
Oh yeah.
Which, as soon as I saw that, I thought, I don't rewatch Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet enough, which I guess means I don't rewatch it literally all the time. Because I really like that movie. And that's all I thought about, is like the tanks and the glass. And
yeah. So the whole thing is that Mike he's rich. He's like a trust fund kid. So he's got tons of money. He's got nice cars. And then, whereas Martin Lawrence's character, he's a family man. He's just working off of his salary as a detective, and so they lead very different lives. But for the majority of the movie, it just seems like they hate each other. Like they're always arguing nonstop bickering, and it gets so old. Like I'm just like, guys, just shut up, just leave, shut up, please. I can't take it anymore. And the second one too. The second one is just them nonstop, like getting into arguments and getting mad at each other. And I get it. I mean, they've worked together for a really long time, and that's the kind of relationship they have and whatever. But it's like, I don't want to see it for 2 hours. Like that's just no.
And apparently the answer for Bad Boys 2 is you don't want to see it for 2 hours, but what about 2.5 hours?
I know. Oh my God.
Because I was just seeing that and I was like, 147 minutes. That's definitely a later Bay.
Yeah. It's so draining. Bad Boys 2 is so draining.
I mean, but what is a quintessential Michael Bay movie unless it goes on at least 60 to 70 minutes longer than it needs to?
Yeah, exactly. I sort of forgot most of what happened in the first one. The second one, I still remembered large chunks of it because Ryan from Ryan Watches a Movie loves Bad Boys 2. Like he would watch it all the time when I'd be over at his house and be like, dude, you're watching Bad Boys 2 again? Are you kidding me? And I sort of forgot that the sort of acrobatics and things that they did in the action sequences was something that was later Bay. and so you don't have a whole lot of that in the first Bad Boys, where they're like flipping around and doing these like just things that a trained police detective would not do when it comes to engaging an enemy. But even though I think it's still better than the second one, I can't get behind Bad Boys. It's just like the jokes nowadays are offensive and just in everything about, I mean, like, I think a lot of people associate Michael Bay movies with dude bros, you know? And I feel like this movie is somewhat misogynistic and
there is no joke in a Michael Bay movie that ages well beyond maybe 20 to 30 seconds after its release.
Yeah. It's funny though, because like because you know, Peter Berg is, I feel like Peter Berg has sort of replaced Michael Bay as like the dude bro director. And I would much rather see a Michael Bay movie than a Peter Berg movie. I don't know if I really got your overall thoughts on it.
It kind of just sat there in the middle for me. I didn't really think much about it because it doesn't say terribly much about its stars, who like Martin Lawrence and Will Smith just kind of get this generic buddy cop banter, and it doesn't say too terribly much about Michael Bay because it was his very, very first feature. So it's just kind of there somewhere in the middle for everyone, and it didn't really do much for me.
I read that Arsenio Hall was originally going to be the Will Smith character. It was going to be Arsenio Hall, Martin Lawrence, and that definitely wouldn't have worked.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
I don't think I could handle that. Both Martin Lawrence and Will Smith were doing their sitcoms respectively during this time. So the two of them were this is when they were really blowing up.
Peak Martin Lawrence, peak Will Smith, and Baby Bay all coming together.
Baby Bay.
Baby Bay.
As action-packed as the 90s were in film, there were also a number of television shows that featured plenty of butt-kicking and explosions, and a man whose name is synonymous with these two things is the one and only Chuck Norris.
Walker, Texas Ranger was created by Leslie Greif and Paul Haggis and ran for 8 seasons spanning 201 episodes and a TV movie from 1993 to 2001. Today we'll be taking a look at the first of the original 3-episode pilot.
So, what did you think of Walker, Texas Ranger?
I mean, well, finally, after a lot of time hearing, you know, of course, because it's a relatively famous show, I finally understood, because it's a show I only thought about when it was like on initial like peak early reruns when I was very young. So it was just this bunch of letters to me as the title, and it was like, I finally understood the title. His name is Walker and he's a Texas Ranger. When I was a little kid, that title was so confounding to me because it looked like none of those words had anything to do with each other.
Well, it's Walker, comma, Texas Ranger.
I finally understood that. I think sometimes in like the TV listings, they wouldn't have the comma.
Yeah.
So it didn't mean anything. But now I get it. That was the most valuable experience here. His name is Walker and he's a Texas Ranger.
Yeah, man. I've never actually seen an entire episode of this show. This was
I haven't either. I've only my most exposure I've ever had was like the clips of like the Walker Texas Ranger lever bit on Conan.
Right, yeah. There's that, and then it's been on syndication for like forever. And there were plenty of times when I'd be flipping through the channels and would land on it and quickly try to move away from it. And we were going to do 2 episodes. We're going to do 2 of the 3 episodes of the pilot run, but the first episode is 2 hours long.
It really is. And it doesn't need to be.
No, like here, I just, as a caveat, I can't speak to the rest of the series because this is all I have to go on. This one 2-hour series premiere. So there's like 5 different plots that are happening in this one episode. there's so many things going on. Like Walker, he's got he's got so many irons in the fire here.
It's like if there was some sort of miscommunication in the network and they like ordered 13 scripts for this first season, and then they were like, oh, can you do them all in 1 2-hour slot?
It's crazy. Like he's dealing with these bank robbers, and at the beginning of the show he's dealing with these other robbers who were like robbing they robbed like an armored truck, and then there's this girl who was sexually assaulted, and somehow the men who assaulted her are out of jail and coming after her, and then he's got his new partner, and he's trying to suss out if his new partner is going to be any good, and there's so much. There's just so much going on in this show, and it's all pretty bad. Like it's all really, really pretty hokey and not too enjoyable. I mean, it's certainly like sort of a so bad it's good type of thing. I think that you could probably watch it with your friends and have a good laugh, but sitting down and just watching this for 2 hours straight was a pretty brutal for me. Like I just yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole mythos about Chuck Norris as a pop cultural figure, and like the whole old internet meme about the Chuck Norris facts, and just watching these episodes is the whole thing about him and every character he plays is that essentially Walker Texas Ranger almost feels like a work of magical realism because physics don't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, when he roundhouse kicks you, you're flying across the earth. It's I mean, I have to imagine that that's where the Chuck Norris jokes came from. They have to be like they have to be from this show, and not rather than like the his film work and stuff. They have to be derived from Walker.
Or perhaps this is some it feels like some sort of extreme extension of a previously established persona, like the kind of thing that you do when you're about to retire. But he wasn't about to retire. He did the show for 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was 55 when he started doing this show.
Yeah, this was absolutely the intent for this to go on as long as possible, and it did.
If you ask Chuck Norris what time is it, he always answers 2 seconds till. If you ask 2 seconds to what, he roundhouse kicks you in the face. Let's just spend the rest of the podcast reciting Chuck Norris jokes.
Why not? I mean, this show is essentially a Chuck Norris joke.
It is. I mean, that's the great part about it. Chuck Norris has 2 speeds: walk and kill. Yeah, he does a lot of ridiculous stuff in this. One of the things that kind of caught me off guard, I'm not quite sure what this was all about, but like it's when he first meets. So the scene when he meets his new partner, James Trevette is his name, played by Clarence Gilliard Jr. He's swimming and he goes, the other guy who's like their boss, I guess. I don't know what this guy's deal is. Is he their boss, or is he like a bar owner, or like what's that guy's deal? Because it seems like he seems like he owns the bar, but he's still a ranger. He does like I don't know, whatever that guy's deal is. And he goes, looks can be deceiving, and Walker goes, not these. And I'm thinking, is that like a racial thing? Is he like?
I don't know. Like, there's so like. I wasn't sure if it was about his like demeanor. Is there something he did not like about his demeanor, or is it about like Walker has to learn to not be a racist? Or it's never really specified exactly what his problem is there.
And you can never really tell because he has one look. Like his face doesn't change. He just has that same face in every scene. It's like, okay. unless he's laughing.
Mhm.
But
Like,
otherwise, he just has that same stare.
Yeah, is it because that he was like more, I don't know, contemporary and Walker's traditional? It felt like there's that line in the film adaptation of Call Me By Your Name. This, by the way, is the only time someone will mention Call Me By Your Name while talking about Walker, Texas Ranger, I think. Where Michael Stuhlbarg's character is saying to Timothy Chalamet's character, saying to father, saying to his son, and Timothy Chalamet early on makes some offhand comment about this gay couple that will come over for dinner later, and he calls them Sonny and Cher. And Michael Stuhlbarg says, that's not a nice thing to say. You're not accepting people for who they are. Why would you call them that? And it says something like, is it because they're gay or because they're ridiculous? Because they were sort of these very eccentric people. And that's what I felt like with Walker and the Clarence Gilliard character is like, does Walker not like him because he's black or because he's like a different kind of cop? It's never specified.
I mean, I initially thought it was because he was black. Like just
I
the
thought
way,
so too, but
just
it's
the way
never
he says
addressed.
That.
Yeah,
looks can be deceiving. Not these.
Yeah, but it's never addressed. Like, you would think it would be a narrative where the character learns something, learns to be more accepting, and it's not. It just kind of, it's like, I don't know.
Now
there's so many mysteries here.
Yeah, this could be something that is further explored as the show goes on, because Clarence Gilliard was in all of the episodes. He's like his partner, and he remained his partner for 196 episodes. So he was in it for the long haul. But there's also this really great scene with him when Walker calls him at one point, and he just goes, "Hey, what did he do? Can't remember what he asked him. Something about his glasses, but he was just like, why don't you wear contacts?" And it was just the most random, like he called him up specifically to ask him why he wears glasses and not contacts. I'm just like,
kind of links
what
we had to go to make random observations to people before we could just text them.
It's just really odd stuff going on in this show. I do love I think my favorite fight scene happened. It was in the second episode, or the second part of the pilot, when he's about to fight the guys who assaulted the girl, and he just goes, "Pull down my tailgate, please." And it's like, oh, that's the sign that we know he's going to be dumping bodies in that tailgate. And then he kicked all their butts real hard. That was the one scene where he kicked the guy and he just flew that guy. It was unbelievable how far this guy flew.
It's right up there with like that scene in The
Crush.
I think The Crush. Where was the carousel?
Yeah.
1993. It's the year where you could just kick someone and they would go flying because nothing was real.
One of my favorite lines in this whole thing, and I had to write it down. The one gang, I think it was the bank robbers. I don't know. I can't get them all straight at this point. There were so many gangs involved in this show. But he goes, "Your reasons stink, along with your reasoning." And I'm just like, somebody wrote that and got paid to write that. Your reasons stink, along with your reasoning.
Along with your reasoning.
Ay, ay, ay. Someone probably got paid a fair wage to write that line.
I guess that was at least whatever a guild scale was in 1993. Your reasons stink, along with your reasoning.
And so the big plot is this going after these bank robbers, and they figured out that these guys are going to hit 4 banks, which are all within like a 4-block radius for some reason. I don't know why there'd be so many banks. It's such a little area, but they're going to hit these banks. And the day before, Walker does this like ritual, and this ritual at the grave, like one of the rangers gets killed during a previous bank robbery, and he does this like ritual at the guy's grave before going to try to stop the robbers. And this ritual he does is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And I don't know if it's like if this show was offensive to Native peoples or not, but it seems slightly offensive to me.
I
don't know.
No, I don't know. It's mainly everything about this character, though, is just sort of not known. So who knows?
Yeah, it's. I will say that the bank robbery sequence, I enjoyed that. It was pretty fun with when all the other cops they blew up a bomb. First of all, they had these bombs and they're all shaped like these. I guess they were supposed to be ashtrays, but they were like these giant like bugs, like these giant beetle things.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked horrible. I don't know what was going on with that, but they gave one to Walker, and of course he figured it out and threw it across the room before it blew up. And they put another one in this other bank that was like a town over or something, or down this all the way across town, so that it would distract all the cops. And then it was only Walker left.
Because there's so much going on here, you expect these plots to be more related, but they're not. But they all kind of get resolved within relatively quick succession, which means Walker has great time management skills. So at least he's got that going for him, along with his superhuman command of the everything else. So
yeah, yep.
For a pilot, it still feels like we know less about the characters at the end than we did at the start. More mystery than action, really.
Probably not worth seeking out.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find too. Like we wanted to talk about it, and it's not on any streaming service that I can find. It's nowhere to be found. We ended up finding it on Daily Motion, and the second part of the first pilot was in a complete mirror image.
There's a mirror.
So like all the text is backwards, and it looks like they're in England. They're in the UK driving on the right.
I haven't seen a
right side drive cars
in years.
Really bizarre. I don't know why it's like that, but who knows? There's no theory of evolution, just a list of creatures Chuck Norris allows to live. That's all I have to say about Walker Texas Ranger. Just overall, pretty bad time, and I just didn't enjoy myself at all. And I suspected as much. Like I didn't expect it to be good, but. I think if the episodes were only half an hour long, I would have found them to be more palatable. And if they were just more consolidated, like this was just all over the place, and the overarching stories were not enough to really keep my attention.
It's more enjoyable in lever-based isolated scenes.
Yeah, the one that. What's the one that used to always play when the guy would get bit by the snake?
That one.
That was so funny. Yeah, I think maybe that's the best way to consume Walker Texas Ranger is in bite-sized clip form.
Yeah, because
that's probably the way to do it.
I would see this and I think, in what possible context would that action make any kind of physical or narrative sense? And now having seen it, I realize it doesn't anyway. It's basically, it's almost abstract in that way. It's about what you wish would happen to bad people, I guess. That they could just get roundhouse kicked and just fly into the air.
He does do a satisfying number of roundhouse kicks in this, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a good number of those that happens.
When you want a hot meal without a big deal, what are you gonna pick?
Hot Pockets! Hot Pockets, filled with pepperoni pizza or ham and cheese and a crispy crust.
What are you gonna pick? Hot Pockets!
Try Lean Pockets, too.
Hot Pockets are such an enigma. I just love that they exist. Like, it's like, what if we took all the ideas of the calzone and then just stuffed it in like an assembly line pocket of dough, and you just microwave it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's sold 5 bazillion units worth.
Yeah,
people just love it.
I can't remember the last time I've never been a big fan of Hot Pockets, and I can't remember the last time I've even had one.
I would eat them more when I was younger because it, to some extent, it does feel like kids' food. Really,
it does. It's like kids food / college food.
Yeah,
Hot Pockets and ramen and.
Mm-hmm. Our final film this month stars Mark Wahlberg in his follow-up to 1997's Boogie Nights, a bombastic and stylish action comedy which marked the English-language debut of director Kirk Wong. Released on April 24th, 1998, this is the big hit.
Read this.
Father, I've been abducted. I am fine.
Abducted?
It says abduct.
Just say abducted.
I've been abducted. I am fine right now, but I may not be for Loring. If you do not pay the son of $1 million...
Wait a minute. Loring? The son of $1 million? What
That's what it says.
That's long and the sum of $1 million. You know what it means.
I don't know what it means. You told me to read this. That's what
Just
I'm doing.
say what it means, okay?
I had to play a clip because the trailer is incomprehensible in audio, in its audio form. Affable hitman Melvin Smiley is constantly being scammed by his cutthroat colleagues in the life-ending business. So when he and his fellow assassins kidnap the daughter of an electronics mogul, it's naturally Melvin who takes the fall when their prime score turns sour. That's because the girl is the granddaughter of the gang's ruthless crime boss. But even while dodging bullets, Melvin has to keep his real job secret from his unsuspecting fiancée, Pam. Now, the big hit was yet another movie that I loved when I was younger. This is the first time I've watched it in many, many years, many moons since I've watched the big hit. And boy, is it bad. Oh my God. What was I thinking?
I'm so glad that you don't like it anymore because I'm about to dunk on this entire movie so hard. So I'm glad we're doing this together.
It doesn't hold up. Not only does it not hold up, but it was never as good as I once thought it was. I watching it now.
I was about to say, what in it would be there to hold up?
Yeah. I don't really know what it was I liked about this movie. I remember a lot of my friends liked it too. We just liked this movie. And I think that it's probably due to how stylized the action scenes were. I thought it was the scene when he's rolling down the rail and stuff. Back then, that looked cool because there weren't really a lot of action movies that were doing that other than maybe Hong Kong movies, which at that point in my life, I hadn't been exposed to. So, I guess it was the action that was cool, but watching it now, I'm like, man, this movie's just grotesque.
It is. I felt
so awful
watching it. Yeah, it's...
Yeah, I have a note here that says, made me feel gross multiple times.
So, yeah, basically, we talk a lot about the different kinds of movies that you can get from the 90s. How are they aging? What do they feel like? This is essentially a movie that is everything that was wrong about 1998 culturally, all wrapped up into one package.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Michael Bay earlier, and the possible misogyny of that could be associated with his movies. This movie is that times a million.
This movie is deeply, deeply offensive to, I think, everybody.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't think there's anybody who would watch this and be like, that's I don't know about that.
Yeah. Not least of which because it stars the completely unproblematic Mark Wahlberg, who is totally not questionable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, this is early Mark Wahlberg too. This is maybe his second movie or some. I think this came out after Fear, but it's after Fear and Boogie Nights, so it's probably his third movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's early Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, Bokeem Woodbine in there with the best line in the movie being straight jacking.
Mm-hmm.
Straight jacking saves you mad cream. And I'm not gonna. I'll leave that without context.
Yeah.
That whole line of jokes was unfun. See, the thing about this, it's an action comedy. So there's a lot of like quote unquote humorous elements in this. Like the fact that he is Mark Wahlberg's character is like so overwhelmed with his love life and his job, and he's letting everybody walk all over him. And it's like, but are we supposed to feel sympathetic for him? Like he's got some kind of ulcer that's happening. Like that's a joke that he's always chugging Maalox, and he has like a locker full of it. And at his house, he has the entire medicine cabinet is dedicated to Maalox. Like if I did that, if I used our entire medicine cabinet for Maalox, my wife would be like, what are you doing? Like you just took over the whole medicine cabinet for your Maalox? Give me a break. He's got a fiance, but he also has a girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So Christina Applegate plays the fiance in what I would call the most stereotypical Jewish family, maybe ever
so
represented.
Offensive.
Maybe ever represented in a movie.
Parents played by Lainey Kazan and Elliot Gould. I mean, just a word, and of course they want us playing to hold the joke about Jewish mothers, so they give Lainey Kazan the most terrible material. But Lainey Kazan, I think, is one of those performers who will be routinely given as like a veteran character actor the most terrible material, and somehow tries to find a way to make it slightly less terrible. Tries to deliver it and sell it somehow, but you can't. Like you couldn't. No one could make this not awful.
Right. And same with Elliot Gould. All he does is like schlub around and burp. Like he's just constantly burping in this movie for some reason. And then like they really want to keep him away from alcohol because I guess if he drinks any alcohol at all, he turns into some kind of monster and starts vomiting everywhere.
Yeah. There is like at the very end of this movie, like all the climactic action scenes happening concurrently in the same location. There's just Elliot Gould drunk, stumbling around and vomiting on everything and everyone, which feels like a metaphor for this movie somehow.
Yeah, I think so. We have Lou Diamond Phillips as Cisco, who is another member of the crew. He's the one that comes up with the plan to kidnap this rich daughter, and I guess he doesn't do his homework and figure out that this girl is connected to their boss. So he then throws Mark Wahlberg under the bus and says that it was him that did it. Meanwhile, killing another one of his like cronies, I guess.
Yeah, once again, where would we be at all with any of these badly written and conceived characters and scripts and plots if they did not all have like a chronic case of seeing the forest for the trees, where they can put together these really intricate plans and then not realize, oh wait,
right,
this guy, this person is connected to the guy that's in charge of this whole thing.
Right. So we already mentioned Bokeem Woodbine. The other member of the group is Vince, played by Antonio Sabato Jr. He just disappears. He straight up disappears for almost the entire movie after the beginning. And I'm not sure where he's at during when all this stuff is happening. He comes back in at the end. And by that point, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot he was even in this. China Chow plays the kidnapped victim, Kiko, and very quickly, like almost immediately, some sort of love affair happens between her and Melvin, Mark Wahlberg's character. And it's creepy.
Yeah.
Especially the cooking scene.
Oh, yeah.
That scene was so disgusting when they're like rubbing the chicken and like rubbing all the ingredients on each other. And I was just like, what is happening here?
Yeah,
what is going on in this movie?
They make sure to make a whole bunch of jokes about how they're making it for his fiance's family, so it has to be kosher. It's like a Jewish cookbook, and I guess the movie thinks that alone is hilarious. And then, if you're not uncomfortable enough already, every single thing that they do in that scene makes you want to die.
Yeah, like he spills some sauce on her leg, and he's like, "Oh, here, let me help you." And then he lifts her up on the counter and ever so slowly wipes the sauce off of her. Which, first of all, when the sauce spills, it looks like a little bit of it gets on her knee. And yet when he lifts her up on the counter, it's just her whole leg is just drenched in this brown sauce.
Was there a script supervisor on this movie? I really don't think there was.
And he's like sensually wiping this disgusting brown sauce off her leg. And it's not, clearly it was supposed to be like sexy, but it was not. It was horrific.
Oh.
But she, the two of them, I guess, become a thing, and he breaks up with
exactly why we don't know.
No,
why?
Who knows?
I guess it doesn't matter.
Who knows? Some kind of Stockholm syndrome thing, I guess. Maybe partially. And then he breaks up with both his fiance and his girlfriend during this time. But then there's this through line of him having to return this videotape, this King Kong videotape. And I think the only reason that exists is so that they can have a big action set piece inside a video store. And I don't know if you noticed, but all the posters in the video store are for trauma movies. And I thought to myself, that fits.
Yeah.
That actually fits quite nicely within this.
If nothing else, you can never say that this movie is not exactly on brand with what it is.
No, and how they had the poster of Bokeem Woodbine's character in the video store is like most adult movies rented or whatever. I mean, it's so ridiculous. The action itself was, I would say, poorly shot. The effects work is atrocious, especially the scene with him, the opening scene with him jumping out of the building that's exploding. that whole thing looked just so bad. I also love in that opening scene how everybody has night vision goggles. Everybody on that floor has night vision goggles. More night vision goggles than I've ever seen in a movie before.
Yeah, to the point where it's like maybe they'd probably wear them even if they never needed them.
Exactly. They just keep them around.
It's an accessory. It's a fashion statement.
Like, so these guys are guarding this mob boss or whoever they're supposed to kill, and they must just keep the night vision goggles on hand just in case. Because they have those things on immediately after the power goes out. They're sporting the goggles.
Must be on their belt or something.
Maybe they all have utility belts with a variety of different things. They all have go bags.
Maybe they just want to wear them at all times. Maybe.
The action choreography is also very rough. It does not look good whatsoever. There is I can give confirmation that there is ska music in this, so we do have ska on the soundtrack.
In a completely unsurprising movie, one of the least surprising things that happens in it.
Yeah. It's just aesthetically, it's very ugly too. Everything about this movie is just very ugly.
It's hideous on the inside and out.
The director, I believe he only did one or two other movies after the big hit. His follow-up was a movie called The Disciples, which was starring Ice-T, and he was listed as Alan Smithy in that. So that makes me instantly want to see The Disciples.
Yes.
It is a martial arts movie with Ice-T as a martial arts expert.
I don't know much about his career, but if he's going, even if he only went Alan Smithy on that one, I can't imagine he got final cut on this either.
No, I'm sure he didn't. I haven't seen any of his other movies. All of his other movies were pretty much exclusively Hong Kong action movies. And I think that this, I mean, I've talked about it numerous times on the regular weekly podcast that I think it's really hard for a lot of like Hong Kong directors or just Asian directors in general to make that transition over into Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's their fault. I think that it's difficult for them to work within the studio system. I think that the studio system tries to make them conform to whatever standards they believe a movie needs when they should just let them have creative control.
Yeah, it's from as much as the studio system does like to bring on like all these name directors from either outside of the American studio system, outside of American filmmaking altogether, be like, hey, look who we got. You know that if it's for a big enough project, they're not going to actually let them experiment or work too much because they're going to be set within very strict definitions of what they are and are not looking for.
Right, exactly.
Which is especially what happens now if you bring out an outside director to make like a franchise title.
Whatever happened, I think this movie was just probably bad.
Yeah,
from the script stage.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's a version of this movie that's good. There's no universe where this movie is good if it's starting with this script.
I find it so funny that this was a movie that I genuinely liked as a youth. I mean,
when did you see it? When was it, like when it came out?
Yeah, I saw it when it came out.
Well, I mean, it does feel very 1998.
Yeah, I mean, it does, but still. There's no real excuse there.
I know. I'm saying
it's a horrible error.
The bad decisions would still be bad, but it wouldn't at least look so horrifically dated.
Yeah,
it would just be that way in its entire demeanor.
Let's see. I was 14. I was 14 when this came out.
I think that's still old. I think that's still old enough to know better.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that.
So there had to be something else going on here. There was something else in your mind, in your processing at that time that for some reason this movie worked, and that's the great mystery here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that I really think that it had to do with the action. Like I really liked the action scenes in this, the shootouts, which watching them now, it's just like they look so bad. But back then, I think I really enjoyed them. And also looking at them now, it's like hundreds, thousands of bullets being fired and no one is getting shot. Like
after a while,
what is going on here?
I guess you think maybe that's to the point where I thought that was just intentional. That was like part of the comedy there, but it probably wasn't.
I don't think it was.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons that like it would be easy to maybe like this under a particular circumstance, because it is so, the action is so ridiculous and the comedy is so big that that eventually you think that they're just conflated and they're just one and the same.
Yeah.
And then you kind of step back but then if you step back and look at it, especially give it some time, and you're like, no, it's just a movie that has no idea what it's doing.
Yeah, I think so.
But I could see how it could have almost gotten away with it in a way. If it just kind of maybe, I don't know, marketing or was different, or just tried to play in the idea that this is a very funny movie or something. And you could have definitely seen a lot more people fooled into thinking that this movie knew what it was doing.
This came out a year before Boondock Saints too, and that was another one that I really liked. That I have a feeling, if I went back and revisited Boondock Saints, I wouldn't be as thrilled about it anymore.
I mean, just as a ground rule, it's very dangerous to rewatch a movie that you liked when you were like 13 or 14. It's a very scary thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do that. I mean, that comes up. I mean, especially on this show, that comes up pretty frequently now. So I have a feeling that there's going to be plenty more of these instances where there's a movie that I really enjoyed that I absolutely can't stand and hate myself now for liking. I mean, I didn't love it to the point where I owned it on VHS or anything, but
I saw But I guess it was like 13 or 14 when it came out. I liked Man of Steel. We've all had movie decisions in our early teen years that we're not proud of.
Oh boy, I think it's funny that you were 13 or 14 when Man of Steel came out.
Yeah,
you're so young that like the Marvel cinema you probably don't even remember like when the Marvel Cinematic Universe started.
I don't. I have my entire movie memory has taken place within this thing that feels like a complete thing where every 3 months I'm like, okay, we're kind of done with these, right?
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
To think about that you like your memory, your whole memory has existed within the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline.
I am just old enough to know, like with the whole superhero thing, a time when more people, besides my own youthful naivety at the start of this, was thinking, okay, well, this isn't gonna stick around for too much longer. And I thought that for a little longer than everyone else did. But I do remember the time when people were like, this is the peak superhero movie. And I'll say I'm young. I'm young. I'm old enough to remember that because nobody has said that for a while now. It just feels like it will go on until it doesn't.
In perpetuity,
anymore. Yeah. We will not predict the end of this. It'll just happen one day.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like when the MCU started, with Iron Man, it was just, there was nothing like it. I mean, by that point, superhero movies were like on their way out. Like we had a little bit of a resurgence it was probably like late 90s or early aughts, like when the first X-Men movie came out and Fantastic Four movies and stuff, and the Raimi Spider-Man movies. But it was pretty much dead by that point. And then when Iron Man came out, it was like, holy crap. Like superhero movies are, these are good. And it was just so incredible because I was a big comic book guy and I was a big superhero person at the time. And it was just like, it was like a dream that these movies were coming out and they were actually good. But, yeah, now I'm definitely feeling
who knows? Who knows
feeling
where
the fatigue.
This ends. My reference point was I always thought it would kind of be, I guess, I don't know if other people thought it, or maybe this was just me kind of just with my myopic young worldview. At first I thought that it was going to be like the 70s disaster movies. It would get about 10 years out and then it would just fall off. But it's still going. This is the equivalent of like if Irwin Allen was still putting out giant disaster blockbusters in 1987.
Yeah, it's very bizarre, isn't it? Like how these just keep going and going. And I mean, I guess as long as they're still well received by critics and they still make a bunch of money, it'll continue to happen.
Yeah, but I think there's so many in production at a given time that once they do start falling off, there's going to be a whole bunch afterwards that are still in production, rather that are going to have to get released if they're far enough along, that are just going to be prepared to not make money. I don't know. Perhaps I'm too young to have the proper perspective if there's like a comparable thing, but I don't think there really is a comparable thing for like franchises that are so already banked up for the next like 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there have been trends and waves of popular genres and things like that, but I don't think there's anything that's been as pervasive and sort of all-consuming as the superhero movie. I don't think there's anything that's come near that at this point. All right, any final thoughts on the big hit?
I enjoyed the conversation we had just now about a completely unrelated topic much more than I enjoyed anything that happened in the movie.
Yeah.
Is my final comment.
It's pretty much garbage. So, All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for this month. Thank you so much for listening. If you dig the show, consider dropping us a review on iTunes, as it would help us out tremendously. And for more 90s goodness, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at 90spod for daily factoids. Feel free to email us at 90s@filmpulse.net or by contacting us through our site, 90spodcast.com. For Ken Bakley, my name's Adam Patterson, and this has been Saved by the 90s.
Bye, everyone.